Welcome back to the program, and right now we are heading towards the market research segment, market update segment, where we speak about something in terms of a market update, how it affects everybody in terms of citizens and also country and also the government at the same time as a whole. So today for this discussion we have invited Arshad Ismail, Frontier Research, from the Frontier Research, and he's an associate there where he will speak about the recent developments in the Sri Lankan's economic backbone. So today, I think we should speak about the topic of IMF, because this is a hot topic that has been there and it's been sort of developing a lot of sub-stories at the same time. So in a brief, could you, in your own point of view, what is it going to be?
All right. So thank you, Vata. Thank you for having me back yet again. So in terms of IMF, right now, since it's been a topic that we've been discussing for a long time, let me focus on the reform aspect of IMF, right? So we've, if you look at the reforms, I think it's a tough pill to swallow. So no one, I think, wants part of their income taken off as government taxes. And with the whole concerns of privatization, there is a whole fear of people losing their jobs. So it's it's natural that all of these reforms are causing some sort of social unrest. So these tough IMF reforms, I think, has to be implemented properly. So in terms of that, what I feel the first thing the government should do is have a proper debt restructuring plan. So in terms of restructuring, they need to make sure that this debt is sustainable, and also they need to look at what impact it would cause on the banking system, because it could cause serious detrimental effects. And if you take countries like, let's say, Ghana, who currently did a debt restructure a couple of months ago. So we did see a lot of social unrest there. We saw people protesting, bondholders on streets, because the process was unfair. So to what extent Sri Lanka will be successful depends on one of this main restructuring. And apart from that, I think we see a lot of protest happening. So one thing for these reforms to successfully happen or successfully take place, I think there needs to be the public support. I think the public needs to support. You can't just have the government coming out there and implementing, saying that we're going to increase taxes, we're going to privatize, but if the public is not going to support, none of this is going to be successful. So a key element for this public support is, I think, is proper communication. Because if you can maybe communicate not just with English, maybe through Sinhala, maybe through Tamil, so that the majority of Sri Lankans understand why are they being taxed, why are we now moving into some sort of, let's say, privatization, I think then they would be more willing to support towards this action. And also transparency. Now, if you look at the Sri Lankan government, none of us know which companies are getting tax exemptions. We don't know who is benefiting, who is getting a tax holiday. So if the process is transparent, even the privatization process, why has this company been selected? How much is the government spending to maintain the losses of these firms, like maybe Sri Lankan Airlines, maybe the Petroleum Corporation? So if those information is made public, it's transparent, people would actually willing to, go ahead, take that extra step, even though it's hard on them. And maybe finally, the corruption aspect. So I think people would all be willing to take that extra burden on them if they feel that the government is less corrupt, or this process is happening properly. So given we do our restructuring properly, it's transparent, properly communicated, and corruption's taken off, I think this whole IMF program and the reforms could go well for Sri Lanka.
So it's not just the government, it's also the people that have to support it, going hand in hand.
True.
And also, I think for the people to do that, do you think it's important that they need to be informed that their tax money is actually working for them?
True. So you need to, that's why I said the transparency aspect of it, right? So if people properly know this is where the tax money is heading, this is who and who is being taxed, because I think no one wants to be treated unfairly. So if I know that, even this guy is taxed equally as me, I'm okay with it. I'm also saying that I also would be a part of this. So yeah.
Okay. So IMF has come on board and there are some changes happening. So what are the other positive things that we can expect?
Yes, so the IMF coming on board is a huge positive. So we have around $3 billion of funds coming in over the next 4 years. So just like I said last time, along with the IMF, what we have is we have the ADB supporting, we have the World Bank financially supporting. So over the next 3 to 4 years, we're looking at around 6.7 billion of inflows coming in from those 3 multilaterals alone. And given that these inflows start to come in, what happens is Sri Lanka could open up to the international market. So we could now borrow later on from these international markets as well. The timing is a little uncertain, but we still can get along with that. And another positive I feel is the inflation actually. So we saw inflation soaring at around 70% back in September. Yes. So it's gradually coming down. We've now seen inflation at around 50%. And recently we saw the petroleum prices coming down. Yes. This could further help inflation come down. So that's another positive. And maybe another positive that I see is the tourism aspect rebounding. So tourism has been one of Sri Lanka's main dollar revenue earning sectors. So if you look at the last 3 months, Jan to March, there's been around 300,000 tourist arrivals into Sri Lanka, bringing in around $500 million much needed dollar revenue. So the government also has been taking a lot of action to promote tourism, and I think it's a sustainable path of earning some dollars. A few positives.
Right. So there were concerns about among the people, and also it says that now when you say they are getting support, and it opens up your receiving of aid from different other institutions. But then again, they also come in form of loans. We have to pay them back.
Yes.
What's your thought on that?
So it's like this. So my personal opinion is a loan is not bad. So as long as it's productively used, it's all right. So if you take any maybe any part of a loan, if it could be used productively to generate some sort of an income, I think we could use that income to pay back the loan. So that should not be a problem. But the moment corruption hits in, the moment it's used into unproductive sectors, that's where the loans become a problem.
Okay, where the loans become a burden, basically.
Right. Yes.
Right. So, so in terms of the regional politics, or like regional economics, where do you think we will head with this development?
Right. If you look at the Asian region as a whole, I think it's performing really well. So the Asian region is supposed to grow by around 4.8% this year in 2023. And it did grow by around 4.2% last year. So if you look at the region alone, and in terms of inflation, it's declining now. The regional inflation is supposed to be close to around a 4.2%. So that's all good signs in terms of the region. And again, the region is mainly driven by places like countries like China and India, who are the main contributors. But again, this outlook could change. There could be risks. So I think one upside risk to it, something that could actually boost the region even more, is if China starts reopening much faster. And then again, the downside risk on the US inflation, their monetary policy stance, the Russian-Ukraine war taking maybe a different turn, that could impact the renewable energy, that could cause food security issues. So all of that is again there. And if I narrow it down to the South Asian region, right, the SAARC countries, the good news is it's the fastest growing sub-region around the world. So, but the bad news is that the South Asian region is not interconnected. The countries aren't interconnected as maybe like the countries in the EU, or maybe like the countries at ASEAN. So we're not interconnected. So this whole growth in the South Asian region is driven by the growth through India. So India accounts to around 80% of the South Asian region's GDP. So what Sri Lanka can do to benefit from this is plug in, be a part of India's growth. Now, for example, what Sri Lanka could do is be a part of that value chain. Let's say India exports a certain, let's say, for example, a motor vehicle. Maybe Sri Lanka could manufacture a part of that. Maybe we could manufacture the rubber tire out of it. So as India's exports increase, we also benefit out of it. So, that kind of a link to the value chain. So where India grows, Sri Lanka could also eventually grow. So I think it's a good outlook, but I think Sri Lanka is the only country that is forecasted to have negative growth in 2023. All other regions, India, Bangladesh, are supposed to grow. Their GDP is supposed to expand. And Bangladesh has been the economy that, let's say, grew the fastest in 2022. So they have been performing well. But overall, the region is performing good. We are lagging a little behind, but I'm sure that if we can have the proper reforms, the proper policies, we can catch up and do well.
So you're saying we should always also seek the help from our help and also assistance and also growth basically duplicate the same growth patterns of other countries in the
Exactly,
same
because
region.
I think it's been working for them. Now, if you look at India, right, I think it's a country very similar to us, even though they have much larger land areas or labor. In terms of the people, in terms of the culture, in terms of the capacity, it's somewhat similar. So if India can do it, if Bangladesh can do it, why not us?
100%. All right, so another topic is that these days, along with this, that fluctuated was the dollar rate, like exchange rate of all the currencies, foreign currencies, and also the interest rates of certain things.
Right, so interest rates, again, exchange rates, a topic that so many people have questions on. It's a very hard thing to predict these days. So maybe I'll start with interest rates alone. So if you take interest rates, these days you've seen, in the past couple of weeks, you've seen interest rates coming down. You've seen the treasury bill rates going at around 28%, now coming down to around 23-24%. So this happened with some sort of clarity coming in on the debt restructuring, even though we don't have full clarity on what exactly would happen, which debt would get restructured. So we are hoping for some sort of clarity from the central bank for that. Given that comes in, our interest rates, I mean treasury bill rates, treasury bond rates would gradually come down. And also, now one reason why interest rates are high is because the central bank has kept the policy rates high to curtail inflation. And given that I feel inflation is also coming down, given that the central bank has a target of bringing it down to around a single digit by the end of this year, which I feel is a little unrealistic though, but still if you at least can bring it to around a 20%, we will see interest rates coming down. Maybe the central bank could reduce their policy rates. And this reduction in interest rates is vital for the economy to grow. Because businesses are not spending, no one's borrowing and spending. People like you and me, no one's taking anything on installments. So only if these rates come down towards the latter part of the year maybe, or maybe over the longer term, we will see the economic recovery. That's on the rates. Then in terms of the exchange rate, I remember the last time I was here, I said, once IMF funds come in, we would see some sort of appreciation. And that did happen.
Well, the concern, or not a concern, but like maybe like an input is that it was just 300 millions.
Okay.
But then again, that's like the gas money.
Right. So it's exactly, right? So the point is this. The point is, it's the positive sentiment that it creates, right? It's not just the amount 300. Just like you said, 300 million is nothing, right? But it's that positivity, that people, the confidence that has been built. People say, right, look here, now we're getting some money, right? Things are going great. So the dollar, which was at 360, came down to around 310, right? So what happened was there were exporters panicking and converting their dollars. So you had a lot of exporters who had dollar revenues. They were scared that this dollar would go further down. So that again created the appreciation once again. So, but again, in the long term, where the dollar would head, little hard to predict. But somewhere over the medium and long term, the natural tendency is for the dollar to appreciate and the rupee to depreciate. Because as long as Sri Lanka's outflows are more than the inflows that we have, that's the natural tendency. So that's where I feel the dollar would head. A slight depreciation, but not a huge increase like we had from 200 to 360.
Slight appreciation, you mean?
Yeah, the dollar would appreciate, yes, the rupee would depreciate.
Okay,
exactly.
great. Right, thank you, Arshad, for coming on board, and we had a great discussion today as well in terms of both the segments we had. So we'll come again in the next episode on Business Today. Until then, have a great week ahead.